zero. I will just now to think which
This mining is energy intensive. Here, they're using surplus electricity from Ethiopia's dams.
Ethiopia just flipped the script on global finance. While the world debates regulation, Addis Ababa is minting Bitcoin with rivers. Using the mighty Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam GERD, the country has turned raw hydroelectric power into digital gold, and it's earning millions in foreign currency while doing it. But behind the triumph lies a storm of questions. Who really benefits when a third of a nation's electricity powers machines instead of homes? Can a country still struggling to connect 15 million people to the grid afford to feed the blockchain instead? Let's find out. When the Ethiopian government announced in early 2025 that it was lifting its freeze on Bitcoin mining licenses, the world barely blinked. But within months, what started as a quiet policy reversal erupted into one of Africa's most transformative economic experiments. Suddenly, global mining giants began landing in Addis Ababa. Chinese-built rigs were shipped in by the container load, and Ethiopia, once better known for coffee and dams, was making headlines as a Bitcoin powerhouse. The decision wasn't born from hype, it was born from necessity. For years, Ethiopia faced an economic squeeze, ballooning import bills, a shortage of foreign reserves, and an ongoing challenge to attract foreign investment without surrendering sovereignty. The government, led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, needed a solution that could generate hard currency fast, without IMF strings or Western loans. Bitcoin mining, powered by Ethiopia's untapped renewable energy, suddenly offered that answer. Behind the scenes, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD, became the pivot of this entire plan. Completed after a decade of political defiance, sanctions, and threats from abroad, GERD stood not only as a symbol of independence, but as a literal powerhouse, capable of producing over 5,000 megawatts of clean electricity. Yet much of that capacity was sitting idle. Transmission infrastructure couldn't carry all that energy across the country, and regional demand lagged behind supply. To Addis Ababa's strategists, that surplus was more than wasted electricity. It was money evaporating into the air. So they asked a simple question: why let megawatts go unused when you can sell them to the digital world? That question triggered a domino effect. Ethiopia's Information Network Security Administration, INSEE, the nation's cybersecurity agency, was tasked with regulating and licensing all crypto mining activities. This wasn't a Wild West rush like China's early days or Nigeria's chaotic crypto boom. Ethiopia designed its system to be state-controlled, energy-based, and export-focused. Mining was permitted, but cryptocurrency trading remained banned to prevent capital flight and speculative chaos. In short, Ethiopia wasn't chasing Bitcoin for ideology, it was weaponizing it for revenue. The numbers tell the story. Within 10 months, Ethiopia Electric Power (EEP) had sold more than $55 million worth of electricity to mining companies, most of them paying in US dollars. Over 25 licensed miners and 40-plus data center operators set up shop near major hydropower stations, some even establishing exclusive agreements to buy electricity at $0.03 to $0.05 per kilowatt hour, a rate unheard of in the fossil-fueled economies of Europe or North America. For a nation constantly battling inflation and forex shortages, it was like opening a new vein of gold, except this gold was digital, renewable, and politically independent. Yet the move wasn't just about money, it was a geopolitical statement. Ethiopia was telling the world, we don't need aid. We'll build our own economy from the power beneath our feet. In a global system where African nations are often punished for ambition, this was revolutionary. Ethiopia wasn't asking for investment, it was monetizing sovereignty, turning its natural resources into liquid assets without mortgaging its future to the IMF or World Bank. Of course, every revolution comes with risk. As Bitcoin miners flooded in, their power-hungry machines began drawing heavily from the national grid, nearly one-third of Ethiopia's electricity consumption by mid-2025. Critics warned that such demand could strain public supply, but officials countered that much of the electricity sold to miners was surplus power, energy that would otherwise go unused until the national grid was fully expanded. Still, the debate grew louder. Citizens asked whether Ethiopia was prioritizing machines over people. Rural communities, many still without basic access to power, began questioning why their country was lighting up digital wallets abroad before homes at home. The government's answer was unapologetic. We are not neglecting the people. We are using Bitcoin to fund the very electrification that critics demand. That argument, turning short-term digital profits into long-term infrastructure, became the moral foundation of Ethiopia's mining strategy. But it also raised another, deeper question that would define the next phase of this story. Can a nation truly build its future on a technology as volatile as Bitcoin? To understand how Ethiopia dared to gamble its future on digital energy, you have to stand before the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, a monument carved from both water and willpower. Rising above the Blue Nile in the Benishangul Gumuz region, GERD is more than concrete and turbines. It is the living proof that a nation once dismissed as aid-dependent can harness nature to command its own destiny. But here's the twist. This dam, originally built to electrify homes and factories, has now become the beating heart of an entirely new kind of export: electricity converted into Bitcoin. When Ethiopia completed GERD after years of sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and threats from abroad, the question quickly became, what next? The dam produced over 5,000 megawatts, enough to power half of East Africa. Yet much of it was stranded, a victim of its own success. Transmission networks were incomplete, industrial demand was lagging, and urban consumption couldn't match supply. For the first time in its history, Ethiopia faced an unexpected dilemma: too much power, too little use. That surplus wasn't just an engineering issue, it was an economic puzzle. So the government flipped the script. Instead of begging for foreign buyers or letting energy go to waste, they decided to sell electricity to the world, digitally. Bitcoin mining became the logical solution. After all, miners don't need transmission lines, distribution grids, or consumer markets. They just need raw, continuous, cheap power. And Ethiopia had it in abundance. This strategy was bold, but deliberate. The Information Network Security Administration, INSA, the country's cybersecurity body, took control of licensing and oversight. It wasn't the Ministry of Energy or Finance calling the shots. It was the agency that understood how to guard digital infrastructure. By doing so, the state ensured that mining didn't turn into an unregulated frenzy. Every megawatt sold, every license issued, every dollar earned was tracked. Ethiopia had no intention of repeating the mistakes of resource-rich nations that lost control of their assets. But beyond regulation lay something deeper: ideology. GERD was built not with Western loans but with Ethiopian money, bonds bought by citizens, diaspora contributions, and state funds raised under sanctions. Every watt generated carries the weight of that sacrifice. So when critics abroad accused Ethiopia of diverting clean energy for profit, the response was simple: this energy belongs to us, and we will decide how to use it. That decision transformed GERD's purpose from a power plant to a financial engine. Its turbines, spinning endlessly, now feed both the grid and the global blockchain. Ethiopia effectively turned water into currency, using nature's flow to mint digital assets that strengthen its reserves and fund development. The symbolism couldn't be more poetic. The same river once fought over by empires now pays for Ethiopia's independence. Yet behind the roaring success lies a fragile balance. Hydropower, unlike oil, depends on the weather. A dry year could choke output, forcing hard choices between lighting cities and fueling miners. To preempt this, the government designed a tiered allocation system, prioritizing domestic needs while keeping a dedicated share for export-based consumption. It's a delicate dance, one that requires absolute precision to avoid public backlash. And there's another layer: geopolitics. The GERD project once invited fury from downstream nations like Egypt, who feared reduced Nile flows. But today, its new digital role has added a different dimension. By transforming hydropower into Bitcoin, Ethiopia is not just controlling its river, it's controlling the narrative of how African nations can turn infrastructure into sovereignty. The dam, in many ways, is Ethiopia's declaration of financial independence. It proves that Africa doesn't need permission to innovate, nor does it need to sell its resources raw. Ethiopia is refining its power digitally, not exporting crude oil or raw minerals, but exporting the energy of its land, transformed by African ingenuity. Still, that leads to the next inevitable question. If the GERD is powering Ethiopia's digital dream, who's actually benefiting from it? Is the money flowing back to the people, or is the new wealth trapped in corporate circuits and government coffers? Let's pause for a second to say big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. The rhetoric of national pride and innovation sounds noble, but every revolution has its hierarchy of winners. And to understand Ethiopia's economic gamble, one must follow the current, both electrical and financial, to see where it truly flows. At first glance, the government's plan appears straightforward. Lease cheap, surplus power to global Bitcoin miners, collect payment in foreign currency, and use that money to stabilize the economy and expand infrastructure. In practice, however, it's more complicated. The state-owned Ethiopian Electric Power (EEP) company doesn't just sell power. It negotiates long-term agreements with private mining firms, often foreign-owned, who bring in massive server farms and advanced technology. These companies pay for energy in dollars or euros, not birr, giving the government a crucial supply of foreign exchange in a time of economic strain. That stream of hard currency has become one of Ethiopia's quiet lifelines. With inflation still biting and import bills piling up, this new revenue helps the state purchase critical goods, from medical equipment to fuel, without relying on IMF loans. It also strengthens the birr's position against the dollar. Analysts at the Ethiopian Economics Association estimate that if current trends continue, Bitcoin mining could soon rival coffee exports in foreign exchange value, an almost unthinkable scenario just 2 years ago. Yet for all this success, the ownership structure of the mining industry tells a more complex story. The biggest beneficiaries so far are foreign technology firms, Chinese, Singaporean, and Emirati investors who saw an opportunity in Ethiopia's cheap hydropower and political stability. They brought in high-efficiency ASIC machines, built data centers in strategic zones like Bahir Dar and Adama, and signed exclusive energy contracts that guaranteed them megawatts of power for years ahead. These firms are the ones minting Bitcoin directly, while the Ethiopian state primarily earns through electricity fees and regulatory charges. Critics argue that this setup resembles a new kind of extraction, not of gold or oil, but of digital resources. In other words, foreign companies generate enormous crypto profits, while Ethiopia earns only a fraction through energy sales. But the government counters that this stage is transitional. By attracting these investors first, Ethiopia is laying the foundation for a domestic mining and data processing ecosystem that will eventually be Ethiopian-owned. It's a model similar to how industrial nations once attracted car manufacturers or tech companies. Learn first, then localize. Meanwhile, for ordinary Ethiopians, the ripple effects are subtle but real. The mining boom has created hundreds of new technical jobs, spurred demand for skilled electricians and data engineers, and inspired local universities to add blockchain technology and renewable energy management courses to their curricula. Some regional administrations are now exploring how smaller-scale community mining or data services could support local economies without straining the national grid. The foreign currency gains also have a multiplier effect. The National Bank of Ethiopia uses part of the inflows to strengthen reserves and to finance essential imports for agriculture, manufacturing, and public works. The hope is that this short-term crypto revenue can fund long-term development, new transmission lines, solar farms, and industrial parks that will sustain Ethiopia's economic independence long after the mining rigs are gone. Still, the system's vulnerability lies in its dependence on the global crypto market. Bitcoin's value is volatile. A sudden crash could slash Ethiopia's earnings overnight. The government is aware of this risk and is already exploring how to diversify digital exports, such as cloud services, artificial intelligence data centers, and green digital infrastructure. The ambition is clear. Ethiopia doesn't just want to mine coins. It wants to mine the future of digital Africa. But this introduces a deeper philosophical dilemma. The more Ethiopia embraces Bitcoin as an export, the more it ties its financial stability to an unpredictable global algorithm, one it doesn't control. And that opens a new question, one bigger than economics. Can a developing nation truly harness a technology built for decentralization without surrendering control of its destiny? That question, complex and uneasy, now sits at the center of Ethiopia's transformation. And to answer it, one must step out of the boardrooms and power plants and into the lives of the people, the farmers, students, and families who still wait for electricity to reach their homes while Bitcoin lights up the world. Because the human cost or benefit of this digital boom is the next part of the story. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. As Bitcoin rigs hum day and night in Ethiopia's new data hubs, the sound of progress isn't reaching everyone. Drive just a few hours outside Addis Ababa, and you'll find villages still waiting for something more fundamental than digital currency, electricity. And that's where Ethiopia's energy miracle begins to collide with its social reality. The government's gamble on Bitcoin is rewriting economic models, but for millions of ordinary citizens, the question remains painfully simple. When will the lights turn on? Ethiopia's rural electrification challenge isn't new. For decades, distance and poverty have conspired to keep millions off the grid. The country's geography, vast, mountainous, and underdeveloped in transmission, makes universal access difficult even under the best conditions. So when people hear that nearly a third of the country's power now feeds foreign mining companies, frustration simmers. Farmers in Amhara, merchants in Oromia, students in Afar, all hear about Bitcoin's glow but live under the dim flicker of diesel lamps. Yet this isn't a story of neglect. It's a story of trade-offs. Government officials insist that without the revenues earned from Bitcoin mining, there would be no funding to expand the grid in the first place. You can't light up the countryside without money, one energy economist remarked recently. And you can't earn that money without exporting power. That logic has become the backbone of Ethiopia's policy. Sacrifice today's consumption for tomorrow's connection. Still, the balance is precarious. Hydroelectric power, while abundant, is seasonal. A weak rainy season or an unexpected drought could slash generation, forcing officials to make hard choices. Do they cut supply to factories, homes, or the lucrative mining farms that bring in foreign currency? For now, the state has prioritized stability, ensuring foreign contracts remain honored, but it's a calculation that tests the very limits of social patience. The situation is even more complex in Ethiopia's urban centers. As new data centers rise on the outskirts of Addis, electricity prices for small businesses have begun to creep up. The Ethiopian Electric Utility (EEU) argues that these fluctuations are temporary, caused by grid adjustments rather than mining itself. But consumers feel the pinch. Hair salons, barbershops, and internet cafes, the small engines of Ethiopia's urban economy, often report sudden outages or tariff spikes. The fear among ordinary Ethiopians is that their daily stability is being traded for a speculative global market they barely understand. Yet despite these tensions, there's an undeniable sense of national pride. Many Ethiopians see the country's boldness as proof that Africa can finally set its own rules. They remember how the West once dictated every economic move through aid and debt, and now Ethiopia is selling its own power on its own terms. Even among skeptics, there's respect for the audacity. The idea that a landlocked African nation could stand toe-to-toe with global tech giants, powering the blockchain with African rivers, feels like history in motion. But the true test of Ethiopia's vision isn't technological, it's ethical. Will the Bitcoin boom translate into more schools, roads, and hospitals? Or will it remain a digital windfall enjoyed by a select few? The government insists it has a plan. Mining revenues are being earmarked for rural electrification and infrastructure development under a new fund supervised by the Ministry of Finance. Early reports suggest pilot programs are already underway to extend power to isolated regions using part of the proceeds. It's a small step, but one that could redefine how digital wealth flows back into human development. The people's patience, however, isn't infinite. As the mining industry expands, so do expectations. Citizens are watching closely, not out of envy, but out of hope that this strange, intangible wealth will finally translate into tangible change. For them, Bitcoin isn't just a financial experiment, it's a test of trust. Do you think Ethiopia's Bitcoin strategy is a genius move toward independence or a digital trap waiting to snap? Let us know in the comment section. Should Africa use its energy to mine cryptocurrency or to power its people first? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.